You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of Zesty Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes. Hey there, mamas. This one's for you today. I just got done interviewing Sonnet and Veronica. They are the creators of Not Your Mother's podcast and founders of Raising Children You Like. And we got to talk about healing your past wounds as a parent so that you don't pass it along to your children, how we can see our triggers through them, how we can help them have emotional intelligence, and just different ways to be with our children, how they're a mirror, what thoughts and beliefs come up, and having some awareness without shame. Really great conversation. These two ladies are fabulous. So they are two friends who became mamas together, and they kept asking the question along their motherhood journey is, why isn't anybody talking about these unsaids of parenting? So they started the Not Your Mother's podcast, bringing on a bunch of experts. We've even been on their podcast to share tips and solutions around the unsaids in motherhood. And they didn't stop there. They needed more. So as their children were turning into toddlers, they also have babies. They were looking for more support. So they partnered with LMFT Brianna Kappa from South Bay Mommy and Me and started an online mindful parenting educational system for toddler parents. I would love to get your feedback if you know other moms who are just really struggling with their children's behavior or blaming themselves or worried about messing them up like I was. Please send them this podcast, take a screenshot, share on Instagram, and send us an email with your feedback as well. We always love to hear it. All right, so let's get into the podcast. Well, hello there. Welcome. I want to welcome two special guests today. I have Sonnet and Veronica. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you for having us. We're so happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. So I was just recently on your podcast.
Yes.
So fun to do a little podcast trade. So their podcast is Not Your Mother's Podcast. And I love how you've set this up in one of the first questions you asked me. So you asked me about the unsaids, like the unsaids in my industry. And it sounds like that's kind of what led you to starting your podcast of Not Your Mother's Podcast. So would you both, I'd love to hear both of your stories, how you got here, and like what were these unsaids that you were hoping people talked about in motherhood?
Well, Veronica and I have been friends way before we were moms, before we were married. We were single ladies out in the world. And so we kind of like went through this transition of motherhood. Our children are 6 weeks apart, and we went through this transition together. And we kind of were in that place of like, do we keep our jobs? Do we start something else? Like, we're being pulled so many directions. Our identity is like in question. We're not sure who we are anymore now that we're moms, and we're like just trying to figure out all these answers. And we're like, how come nobody's talking about all this stuff? And as we started digging deeper, and we would go on these long walks because we also lived down the block from each other, and we would talk about, the journey of motherhood and how it was really showing us all these places that we needed to address in ourselves so that we hope not to like pass it on to our children. And at babies, like we didn't even know what that was yet because we were just like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to survive in motherhood. Like what's being triggered in me? And as our children have grown older, we have more questions around that. So we created Not Your Mother's Podcast to find experts to talk to give us tips and solutions and actionable things that you can actually implement in your life to understand to see some differences and to find more ease and to transition and to find like this idea of identity. Are you ever getting back to your old self? No. And so how do you feel, how do you make peace with that, and how do you step into this new role that you have and incorporate old parts of yourself and make space for yourself and really show up as a whole parent? And so um that is our journey before this. And still, I am a singer and a songwriter. So that's what I do when I'm not podcasting or doing Raising Children You Like, which is our other joint venture around toddler parenting and mindful and gentle parenting that sprung out of wanting more answers around showing up as parents.
Yeah, and what's so great about this journey that we're on is that it really just unfolds with every problem that arises, right? So it's like anything, because parenthood is just, you're a parent for life, you're in postpartum for life, and there's all of these. You have different energies at different times of your life to be able to address certain things, and so that's why this, with Not Your Mother's podcast, and then speaking to you, like we have our hormones are out of whack with having like, back to back pregnancies. And it's like we can talk to people to really give us insight, and then we get to share it with people who are also on this journey at any point with their journey, because you are in postpartum forever. So it's like an onion, like this whole like venture that we're on. So we're really
Mhm.
excited about it.
I love you said onion. Dr. Alex just did a peeling the onion podcast not too long
Ooh.
ago. So
I
she's
also
really
love that you said like we're in different seasons, we have different energy, because it brings back to what we talked about and what you share about different energy. Like even just through the whole month, we're bringing different energy to it, and that was such an eye-opening conversation.
Totally.
Well, parenting by far has definitely pushed me the farthest. I'd say business would be the second.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily something I was, obviously, I knew there's a lot that comes with parenting and the emotional aspect of it. So I know you had said that parenting can be really healing because it pushes you up against your limiting beliefs. So I would love to hear like what were the biggest limiting beliefs for you, or what are the patterns that you're seeing and that it's being pulled up for people?
Go ahead, Veronica. You
Okay.
start that one.
Yeah. So for me, it's so easy to think about the hard parts of life, right? Especially when you're new to a role. And so, I mean, just the idea that like you have to think that something is hard first before it gets better was one thing that I was like, "Oh wow, I'm focusing on the negative aspects of this new um situation that I'm in, rather than like with curiosity." And it wasn't like I didn't realize it at first, right? When Sonnet and I were newly postpartum, like, 6 months, we were just like, oh my gosh, what's happening? What's happening? And we're kind of focusing on like why we couldn't do something rather than like, how can we? And so it really became obvious when my oldest, who's 3 now, became a toddler, because she, started growing into her own identity. She had her own opinions, with words or not. And I started really feeling like every day feels so hard. Like, why is this so hard? And it was like, I always felt like I was failing. And just that, focusing on the mindset shift, like I have the power to take charge of my life and really find a way to make this my experience, is what I need to do, because life is comprised of like all these little moments. And if I'm always focusing on like how hard it is, I'm just going to pass that down to her. And she just like really showed me the mirror of like how I was showing up, and like how much I was yelling, how much I was like frowning. I had no idea that I was frowning, and she would be like, "Mommy, you mad?" Mom's sad. Mom's mad. And it was never like mom's happy. And it was like that was such an eye opener for me, where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm showing up like really grumpy and not even realizing it." And now it's going to impact my children, because they're going to think like, "Oh, you're supposed to just be mad in life because that's what my mom is." And so that was like huge for me.
Mm. Yeah, because it's like what we're modeling to our children, and so the what was modeled to us. So we talk about in Raising Children You Like that we always say, "Oh gosh, we wish we had a parent manual or something," but truly we actually do, and it was what our parents did with us, because that's kind of just like our default until you start identifying or becoming aware of what it is that you might want to change and show up differently. And for me, it was really around boundaries. Like that's been one of the biggest eye-opening ones for me, is just what are they and how can I put them in place for myself so that I'm teaching my child clear and strong boundaries that she can use, and but how do I also use them for her in a way that is gentle but firm. And I wasn't modeled boundaries, and in my mind boundaries are mean you don't love somebody in a way, so I had to really come up against that limiting belief, and I still do. Like I still have to talk myself out of it. Like my child knows that she's loved even if I put a firm boundary here, or like I have to say no to this. In my past life I would have just said yes to everything and run myself so thin that I had no space for anything else. And I have to put up firm boundaries for my own energy so that I can show up for my family and so that I can show my daughter what it means to have healthy boundaries. And that is a very new thing for me. And I sometimes miss the mark, and I have to go back and figure out like where did that boundary go, and next time how will I do it. And also when I say the boundary, sometimes it comes out like really um clumsy and harsh because I can't figure out, haven't quite figured out like the gentle way of saying it to other people. And sometimes it's too gentle and too kind, or not kind, but too passive. So it's still just trying to navigate that.
Yeah, it's like our limiting belief is that just because something feels comfortable or familiar, that we have to continue doing it that way. In my case, my mom was a depressed person because my dad died when I was 4, and I had to learn how to basically like parent myself because she was emotionally unavailable, and then I had a dad who was physically unavailable, and I felt like I had to do everything myself and kind of like, figure it all out. And even though that wasn't like so on the nose for me with parenting, it was like the unavailability of emotions of just being like down or hard was like what I was projecting because that's what was familiar from a parent in my, and this is all like subconscious, right? Like it's not like you get into, I'm going to become a parent and be just like my depressed mother. Like you don't actually think that, you just kind of do it. And it really brings like awareness and these, your children to like mirror to you like, oh, there's not this isn't the way to do it because you're not actually having a good time. And it doesn't have to be that hard. And yeah, I mean, kids are going to be going through their developmental situations, like tantrums are unavoidable. They are a part of their development. That's the way that they're learning how to be in relationship with the world, with themselves. They're brand new to it, and they're just exploring their range of emotions. But it's not we can't blame them for our triggers. Like we can't blame them for us being upset that they're yelling or that they're throwing food or hitting or all these like triggering behaviors. That's on us. The world is going to teach the world. You're not going to get here and go unscathed. Like you can't avoid trauma, but you can avoid passing down your own.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. So, for the mom out there who's realizing, right, maybe there's a pattern that their parents did that they're like, oh, shoot, now I'm realizing, right? Like the depressed thing you're talking about, or whatever your child's mirroring back to you, or whatever you're starting to realize. And then what would be a tip or a process to get from, okay, I'm aware I'm doing it. I think a lot of the first thing many of us will go to is shame of like, oh, I shouldn't have done that because, right. So we're all about not having shame be a part of the process. So can you just speak to that? Like, what would you say to that mom who's like now has the awareness, and then what next?
Take us on it.
Okay. Yeah. And one of the things that in our podcast, when we had you on, I loved how you dove into this too, and your side of the work. Like you can't make something new happen and implement new habits until you've kind of dug in and seen the foundation there. So what we recommend is just that awareness is so key, and then to start noticing when it happens. So you can journal about it. You can start asking start talking with your parenting partner if you have a parenting partner, but just becoming aware. And we take you on like a little step-by-step journal prompt that in our course that helps you kind of identify different parts of this and undo it. But I would say if you don't have those prompts, that just one of the biggest things is that awareness, and then journaling about it, and start taking some time for yourself to fill your cup, because when you are completely empty, you cannot have the energy to start becoming aware and start reframing those triggers. So when your child yells and you just yell back, and you're okay, well, I want to change that behavior. I can somehow start, I can start becoming aware that I am yelling back in the moment, and start giving myself some grace, saying, okay, what I need to do here is repair with my child. And then I can also start identifying, what is it in me that wants to yell back? Is it my belief that my children should be seen and not heard? Is it that I didn't get enough space as a child to yell and scream, and I don't feel like my children should have that much space to yell and scream? Or that whatever things are coming up for you, it's a big process to start journaling and start seeing what those beliefs are. But when the first step is to identify, my child is yelling and that triggers me. What is it triggering? What are the limiting beliefs there? What is it that is making me feel like my child should know better, or that I can't hold on to that emotion? And then from there, to start reframing and starting a new dialogue of what you can do instead.
Yeah, and then like what that can look like in a day, for instance, like you can wake up and just say like a simple gratitude for something, because when you start with gratitude rather than like an ask, you're when you're asking, you're already like running on empty, right? You're already like, "Oh, wait, I'm empty." But if you start with gratitude, it kind of like sets you up in this like mind of abundance. So if you just like and it could be something small, like thank you for waking up, like thank you for waking up today. Thank you for the roof over my head, for the a car that works, my healthy family, and like you can kind of go down the list, and then go hit the journal, like, and set an intention of like what it is that you want, how you want to show up. And then from there you can start kind of like asking yourself like these questions that Sonnet was saying. And then when you plant that seed in the day, it kind of like lingers in within your in your body. And then as you go on through the day, start noticing like where you have tension. Like for me, like my eyebrows get furrowed and my jaw starts getting like funny feeling. So if I'll usually do it when I'm either having my morning coffee, and I definitely do it at night when I'm giving the girls a bath, and I just kind of like massage my points, and I just say to myself like, I am not in danger. I am safe, and I can handle anything that comes my way, because I also have a lot of anxiety, and so my body goes into like fight and flight all the time. And just by like saying these mantras to myself really helps me stay in my body. And also like it's rewiring my brain in a way that makes me feel like, oh, my kids aren't actually trying to kill me. They're not trying to attack me right now. I'm safe, and I can actually handle the situation. So just finding little areas in your life where it's like you're taking care of something like bath, and then doing something for yourself, because a lot of times it's gonna, especially if this is hard new for parents to be doing, this self-care, just integrate it into your day. And then from there you can start creating the space in your mind to be like, yes, I am giving myself permission to do this. I deserve a day like on the weekend or half a day to go do something for myself. But starting small will just start doing those shifts enough to like start shifting you in that right direction.
And I just wanted to add, like, the point that you said about shame, how we end up in that place of shame, and how it's so important to start like all the work that Veronica just said, it takes you out of that place of being like, I am a bad mother because I was yelling, to I yelled and I'm looking into why I'm doing that and I'm shifting that behavior and I'm in control of this. And, like I have the power to change my thoughts and to change my behavior rather than just spiraling and internalizing that behavior as like, I'm such a terrible mom and, I'm damaging my children for life, sort of example.
And truly, the research, like our whole course is all based on research and attachment. And truly, like it's never too late to repair. So it's inevitable. Like everybody loses their mind. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does things that they're not proud of. And so when you act in a way that you're not proud of, literally apologize to however young or old the child or parent or person is, and repair your side and just say and own it. Like, I completely lost control. I haven't taken care of myself. I'm so sorry that I yelled at you. I noticed that it really scared you, but I'm working on it and I'm doing my best. And I'm going to learn, I'm going to take my, my 3 flower breaths, and then you just breathe and then ask your child to breathe with you, and, just model what you wanted to do. And that alone will just, melt the guilt away, because yeah, shame and guilt, you can get into those shame cycles, and it's really hard to get out of.
Thank you. I'm glad you said about the repair piece. So I know, as a mom for me, I'm always, I'm sure we all are, but having me right now going back and doing so much work on my childhood, right? So I've just been doing a lot of hypnosis and timeline therapy and just all these amazing things where I've discovered events and things that I created a limiting decision or a limiting belief at that time. And because of that, I am now, every time something happens with my children, I'm like, there's that event, right? And, my daughter she wanted to get a fish. She's been begging for this fish. She's 10 forever. Finally, we say yes. She used her own money to buy the fish tank. She spent $60 on the tank of the fish, and the fish died in 3 days.
Oh no.
I
Oh
don't know why. I don't
no.
know how. She followed all the things. And I was, she's so sad. And of course, in my head, it's like, right, it's a fish. Okay, we'll get another fish. And I'm thinking, this is the moment. This is the moment she decides she can't keep things alive, right? Or like she shouldn't be in charge of things, or
Right, right. Like what's going on for her brain?
and meanwhile, it could just be something of, she doesn't notice at all, and it's not even a thing for her, and it's just a thing for me because this is my reality. And so the repair piece there, so I understand, if I were to do something specifically like yell at my child, that seems very obvious. The harder part for me is when my perception is this is going to create some belief, right, in the world.
Hmm. Hmm.
And what would be like the repair look around something like that?
Well, it would look like narrating to her the story that you want her to imprint, so that you're helping her make sense of what the reality is. So she's not left to make her own decisions or ideas about what just happened, and you're helping her put words and meaning and helping her explore any feelings that she has around that, like, oh, our fish died and there was nothing that you did. Sometimes fish die and we can get another one, or we can wait. What would you like to do? How do you feel about that? So you're helping her brain put the pieces together and giving her the story rather than leaving her to make the story up on her by herself. And I think that part of our generation was like, oh, well, let's pretend it didn't happen, and then they'll just make their own stories. And so we make these little kid ideas, and we start shutting parts of ourselves off because we're too our brains are too
We have like no
underdeveloped to
context.
create. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I would also add to that, in, approaching it with curiosity. So, narrating the facts of what happened with the fish, and then, like, I'm curious to think, like, what do you think happened? And then, just because that's also a problem solving exercise for her, where she's kind of like, well, let's think, like, what happened? We followed all the instructions, and and then she would come up with her own conclusion, and then, you would work in that conversation in real time, and you could either like come up with a conclusion together, or a solution, or she could just completely forget about it. Or if she was like really upset about it, then you validate her feelings, like, yeah, you worked so hard to save all this money, and you've waited for this moment, and it didn't turn out the way that you wanted. And then that would be a teachable moment of, even when you work hard to get something, like the outcome doesn't happen, but you still got to the goal, right? And so it's like, and obviously this is all like age appropriate. So no matter how old your kid is, like you can't really say that to a 3-year-old, because they're like, I don't know, am I saving money? Like, what is money?
She is driven by money, and so she immediately wanted to sell the fish tank back.
See, solution, right? Like, no wasted investment. That's incredible.
Put it up on for opera.
She's like, I'm going to start a business now.
She's definitely already got her businesses, so she's
Wow.
That's awesome.
Incredible.
okay, very cool. So I also noticed, I have 2 children. The other one is 5, and last night I heard her telling her dad very, very graphic and vividly that she wanted him to eat cereal with her at the same time, and she wanted it to be the same cereal because sometimes Daddy has cereal that has gluten. She eats gluten-free cereal, so she was very clear how it needed to be the same cereal at the same time, and he couldn't finish before her, and he did eat the same cereal and he finished before her, and she just cried so hard about it. And I heard her telling him, which I thought was amazing. She was telling him, Daddy, don't eat the cereal at the same time, she said, it burns inside of me.
Oh,
I was like, wow, it's kind of cool to me that she could actually tap into like such a feeling. So how do we get, and then my 10-year-old doesn't want to talk feelings at all, so how do we kind of get children to explain or tap into this, like to really share, well, what are you feeling about this, like the fish, for example, or the cereal?
Oh, I love that so much. You want to take it, Veronica?
you go.
Um, yeah, well, I think it's age appropriate, like you sometimes, so we have 3-year-olds are our oldest. And so we're doing a lot of narrating of that made you feel this, or I can see you're really upset. What do you need right now? And so by modeling to them language around emotions, and it sounds like you do a really good job of doing that with your 5-year-old, because she could identify that like something was feeling, something was going on for her in that moment, and she was able to express it and felt safe doing that. So I think it's just getting curious, and it's also modeling, narrating that to them so that they have that language to start with. Because if they don't know what it feels like to be mad, or what it feels like to be sad, or what those words are, connecting those together, then it's hard for them to find them to express that to you. So we read a lot of books. We create empathy books together after the fact. So when there's a big rupture like that, it doesn't sound like it was that big, but if something happens where, like, for example, my child is into like, I don't want to wear clothes in public right now. And so we have a lot of breakdowns around that. And so, we came back home and we drew a little book about it. It's like, okay, so, when you have to put on your shoes, it makes you feel like, is it this face? Is it that face? And she's like, oh, it's this face. And so what are we going to do about it next time? And how can you say that to mama, in a way that I can hear you with my listening ears? And so the processing of it after the fact, after they're regulated, is such a great way, because in the moment sometimes they are way too dysregulated to be like, how are you feeling right now? What is going on in your brain? And so after, when they're regulated and you've come to a place where you can come back together and you can talk about what those emotions were that they were having, so that as they get older, they have the ability to start processing and telling you those emotions. And the thing is, like, if we don't teach our children, they don't know. So
Hmm.
they're not just going to be able to tell us one day that they're feeling sad or mad if we didn't help them understand what those emotions were to start with.
And if we don't tell them when we are sad or mad, because it's so easy for us to not want to, like, we do it out of protection, right? We say like, oh, I don't want to show them that I'm upset because I don't want them to take my baggage, which, I mean, of course, like that's what we want to do, but there's also a truth to being honest with like how you're feeling. And you can say like, I'm feeling very frustrated right now. My hands feel really clammy. So I need to just massage them because I feel a lot of tension in my hands. And so just by saying that, they kind of start hearing like, oh, when, like, I wonder what happens to my body when I'm mad, for like the 10-year-old, for instance. With the 5-year-old, it would be great. I mean, she already like sounds like she's on the path, but just for kid and even the 10-year-old, I mean, for the empathy book, you would want that to do the book together. So have them co-create the book with you. Whereas like if you have younger kids, like infants and toddlers, you would obviously make the book, and then you would read the story of like exactly what happened so they can understand like, okay, I was supposed to put my shoes on and I didn't, and I wanted to go outside and I was very upset, but shoes, we put shoes on our feet because we're going to be outside. And and then you can like create the plan like, well, if I want to go outside, the next time I need to put my shoes on, and it's okay to be mad, and or whatever the story is. But yeah, definitely what Sana said. Like the empathy book is amazing, and just narrating your own feelings so they understand that, um how frustrations or hunger feels. Like if you're hungry and you can say like, oh, I'm so hungry, I can feel my tummy rumbling, or I get really angry. I get like major hangry, and so my face kind of like starts getting droopy. And so today, I this morning, I said that to my 2-year-old and my husband. I mean, he already sees like, oh my god, my wife is gone. She's not here. And so I'll say like, oh, I'm so hungry, my belly feels so lonely, and it's starting to get grumpy, I need to eat something, So it's just by just having that like a in part of your everyday dialogue will create emotional intelligence.
The emotion piece is definitely generationally, right? I know my parents, they showed it, just not as much. So I think with my older daughter, I didn't really show as much in front of her, or at least that was her perception, because she remembers vividly the first day mom cried, which of course was not the first day I cried, but we were in the airport and she was over 5. So it was clearly not the first day.
Wow.
That's what she remembers. Actually, I do specifically remember, if I ever had tears in my eyes, she wouldn't notice. Whereas my little one, just like at 2 or 3, she'd be like, "Mama's sad." She knew. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, it was like such a big shock to her because I was crying. I probably also in a public place and I was in charge of them and to the flight. They were not putting us on a flight and we were stuck in New York without a car seat. So,
Oh my God.
um, but practicing that, how to balance, right, the showing emotion and then not bringing your child into every emotion.
Hmm.
It's such a, like,
Well, you do it by just like always resolving it, right? So if you have a big outburst that could be scary to them, as like this we say this a lot when it comes to like having a heated conversation with your partner. It's the same with your emotions. Like if it happens in front of your children, always let them know that it was resolved. So like, I was crying because of this, but I fixed it and I'm not sad anymore. So there's like a conclusion to that like scary moment for them.
And just always being aware. I think, if you hadn't done that, then I wouldn't, I'm so sad. I'm so mad because you did this. And so always keeping the blame out of it, or you're not frustrated because of them. You might be frustrated and this is how you're working through it and this is how it's showing up, but you're not frustrated because they did something. And I think that helps um, detach the idea of when mommy has emotions, these big emotions, I need to do something about it, I need to fix it for her. And whereas I think in our generation, or at least for myself, that I took that role on of like, my mom's having big emotions. What I need to, be a really good girl. I need to change. I need to do something to be the parent here to take care of her. And we don't want to put that on them. We want to model to them how to have healthy emotions, and being angry, being mad. These are all healthy emotions to have. And this is how you work through it. This is an acceptable way of doing it. When you're angry and mad, we don't throw things, we don't yell, we might, and then we repair, but this is how we want to have an acceptable way of being mad and angry, or all of the different emotions, sad.
Mhm.
You have a whole module, right, on looking at triggers and wounds from our past and just how we can heal these and not pass these on to our children, right? You want to
Oh
just
Yeah,
yeah.
we
your
have a whole course.
top tip, just some takeaway. We'd love to have everyone feel like they can just something they can do or think of right away or journal on. Can you share something around that?
Well, yeah, our triggers are our teachers. So if you get triggered by something, that's what we call a wall. Like there's something that's blocking you that needs to be addressed. So if something is triggering you, not like it's hard in the moment, but especially with like a parent being a parent, but make some time at the end of the day or and just really reflect like why is that such a hard like what is that bringing up for me? And it might be journaling, you might can go on like a meditative walk or jump on a bike or something and really start thinking about that because again like if you don't have the awareness piece behind it, nothing's going to work. Like you have to be aware of that trigger. um, Sonnet, do you want to add to it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's just like that's such a key starting point, and those triggers can be those moments when you just are feeling so spent with your child, or you're upset with them, you're frustrated with them, you are yelling, you're just feeling shut down. It can show up in a lot of different ways where you want to like run away, whatever those might be, where you're like, I'm not able to hold my child's emotions right now. I'm being triggered. I'm dysregulated. What is it about their behavior that's dysregulating me? Why can't they are a child and I'm an adult. So there's something in this that I believe they should be a different way, or I believe they should have heard me the first time. I believe, or I, I, those beliefs and start identifying what those are.
Yeah, it does seem like every time I dig into any of the triggers, you come back to more of a not what your child did, but it's some belief about usually you as a parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
if I was a better parent, they wouldn't be doing this, or if I was more present, maybe they
Right.
wouldn't be acting out, or if I had fed them better, they wouldn't have the blood sugar up and down, whatever it is. So um,
Right.
that's again coming back to how hard we are at ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. And that it almost always leads to more self-care. Like if you need more time for yourself. You have too much on your plate, you have too much in your brain, you don't have a big enough container to take care of it all. And this is like the hardest thing for parents, especially moms, to do, but it's the number one thing that will help you show up in the way that you want and the way that you dream of because we we believe that all parents have a good intention no matter how bad they are. It's just there's just some have more baggage and more disconnected parts of themselves than others, and it's truly just if you want parenting to transform your life, it most certainly can, and that's our goal, is to help any parent who wants to transform their life to do it through parenting. Like we've got your back.
I recently heard about, talk about you don't want to pour from an empty cup. And I heard someone say, yeah, you completely overfill your cup and then you should be feeding other people from your saucer.
Mm-hmm.
Ah,
I really like that. And,
totally.
I
and
love that.
I know one last question for the moms listening. I know for me, like, because I'm thinking, right, everyone's like, yeah, sounds great, making time for me, whatever, small children or however it is, right? There's not you
Mm-mm.
don't even pee alone. So not much time to yourself. And I know early on, I would only get a babysitter if I was doing work. I'm doing air quotes for the podcast, right? If it was like something where I was making money and therefore in my head I could, I guess, just justify this time with my child. I'm not like that anymore. I'm actually the opposite. If I have somebody watching my children, I'm like, I'm gonna be walking or meditating or at the taking a massage. So can you just speak to that? Like someone who's like, no, I just can't let someone else be with my child for me to just fill my own cup and take a bath or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a wall, right? That's a block. Like that's a question number one is like, why do you have this belief? Because even if you do the to get the time, you're just going to feel guilty the whole time. You're going to squander it, right? You're going to make that belief come true. So it's a block. Like that's a you got to examine
It's a
that.
place to examine, yeah. And then I like it really is. I mean, COVID, like it's hard to get sitters and we're all, under the same roof doing so much and trying to wear all these hats, and it is extremely difficult. So I to find those moments for yourself and take that time, especially with young children, to fill your own cup. And it's about getting creative. It's about like, okay, when the children go to sleep, I'm going to be very I'm going to commit myself to taking 10 minutes to meditate. I'm going to commit to putting that this time, these 10 minutes for myself as a priority over doing the dishes, over vacuuming the house, or over, getting back to those emails right now. Because when I prioritize myself and I get creative in how I'm going to do it, I can show up for those emails better. I can do the dishes with more joy. I can show up for my children in a way that's just, more whole. And so I think the block, not everybody can have childcare, and so it's not just you have to get childcare to have self-care. You have to also be willing to prioritize those 10 minutes. And as your children get older, you can take more and more time, and you can get childcare, and you can work with your partner if you have a partner. And it's just about getting serious about prioritizing that.
Yeah, it's the it really it you know when you're examining that, it's about like finding the the understanding that you deserve this, that life isn't linear, that there are times to slow down in order for you to speed up, and you need to do it apologetically. If you have a partner, you say, Saturday morning, I'm going for a walk, goodbye. You like you got it, and really taking it, because that this is part of it. Like you have to, especially in when it's a new muscle, like, and how Sonnet was saying with her boundary, like sometimes it comes out, like more harsh because it's a new thing. But maybe you do have to say it with like conviction, like, I'm going on the walk and that's what it is. But whatever gets you to propel in that direction, do that, and then repair. You can always repair.
So sorry I yelled at you, but
But I'm not sorry I took the walk.
Love it. Thank you, ladies. Tell everyone where to find you, what you're offering. This is so super helpful, especially with small children.
Mm.
Just start thinking about these things.
Yeah, so you can find us at raisingchildrenyoulike.com. That's where the course will be starting in May. We're launching a brand new course, and it is a program that will take you through tantrums, discipline. It'll give you tips and hacks and solutions and strategies around dealing with without yelling discipline. And it takes you through bedtime, it takes you through eating, it takes you through doctor visits. And then part two is transforming your toddler years, and that is really going to take you through identifying what these triggers are, building a bridge between how your limiting belief and the way that it is that you want to believe, and showing up in a different way in your parenting. And it talks about, it teaches you how to fight fairly. It talks about sibling work. And so you can find us, all of that. It's one big experience. And we're really excited to be launching this and sharing this with the world, because we've been sharing a lot of this on Instagram. So if you don't already follow us on Instagram, Raising Children You Like on Instagram, we give tips, and you'll really get an idea for the content that's going to be in the course there. And then Not Your Mother's Podcast is our podcast where you can hear people like you on there.
Thank you so much. This has been fabulous.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.